Hey, Kat.
Hey, Shalom. How you doing?
So far, good. I'm going to call you today since Mommy left.
What?
Yeah, he said he's going to call you today.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay. Let's see. What are we holding here? On the very bottom of Ayin Dalet Amud Aleph, 74A, almost the bottom line.
A or B?
Okay. The last piece, it says a place Kimel Lezeva. We thank Hashem that we learn Torah every day. In this list of learning, we have the base of Mikdash. And we're learning Lili Nishma, Sava Goldavas Baruch Binyamin, and San Osev Ben Benzion, whoever needs a refuah shlema. Okay, we learned in the Mishnah, Pesachim al Zevel Kol Yemayis Hashana, that they can set a price for fertilizer, which is manure in those days, the whole year, and they didn't have to wait for the market price to go out and all of that, because this was always available. There was always manure available. Now, that wasn't the whole Mishnah. We had another opinion there that said, Rabbi Yossi, unless he has it, unless this person himself has it in the garbage heap. And the Chachamim allow it. So the Gemara starts off with, 1 second, Chachamim haina tanakama. What do you mean the Chacham allow it? The first opinion said that you're allowed to. The second opinion says no. The third opinion says you're allowed to. So the third opinion is the same as the first opinion. Amar Rava says you might say Gesham Mekabinayo. This difference between the first opinion and the third opinion. The first opinion said that you're always allowed to the entire year. The Rabbi Yossi argues, and the third opinion comes along and says it depends. If it's in the rainy season, then you need to have it. They would agree with Rabbi Yossi. But if it's in the summer season, then it's allowed. And the explanation for this is how available it is. Apparently, it would get crushed during the winter, and by the summer, it was available. I think we learned in Baba Kama, we learned that you were allowed to put your compost into the streets, and it would get crushed during the winter, and then by the summertime, it was already everyone had compost from everyone had fertilizer from what was crushed. Okay, we said that a stipulation could be made into this arrangement when someone sets up, says, I'm going to provide you money now, you're going to provide me with the produce later at the going price, but he can stipulate and say that if the price changes, I want the cheaper price. You can put that in, a clause in there. If he does that, then that's what he gets. If he doesn't put it in, then he gets the original price, which may be the higher price. Well,
it's kind of a risk because you don't know if the price will go up and down.
Yeah, there is a risk, but if you put in this stipulation, then you take away that risk.
Which was like 2 days ago, we had the example of the same thing. There was another thing that was available around the year round.
This was just the manure, the fertilizer. We had it in the Mishnah, and now we're explaining it.
Yeah. I don't know, for some reason I thought it was something else. Now I'm checking it.
That was like the token, right?
And now I'm checking it. Could it have been like the old wheat?
It made a difference between the price of the new wheat versus the price of the old wheat. The price of the new wheat was lower than the old wheat. Old wheat was ready to crush, ready to. Gavra. Yeah. I don't know why we need all these details in the story, but there was a fellow, he was a father-in-law, he was giving a dowry and he gives his son-in-law money to go purchase the dowry. I guess it's going to his daughter, maybe for them. Anyway, this guy is going to be the merchant or the shliach that's going to go end up buying it. The saif at the end, Zal Nedunya, after he made up with the seller, the shliach, this son-in-law, makes up with him what the price it is. It turns out that the price goes down and he can get it for less. So the father-in-law wants to retract. So just from this purchase, not from the whole marriage. It's not getting out of that. It's just getting out of this business deal. Also, Lakami de Rav Papa comes to Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, well, you know, there could have been a stipulation that you could have made that if the price changes, you could take like the new price. If you made that, if that's what you put in there, then great. But if you didn't put that in, so then shakal kimikara, then you're going to be stuck with taking the original price. Rav Papa. Sages tell to Rav Papa, like pasak shakal kimikara. 1 second. If he didn't put that stipulation in, he has to take like the first price, like the original higher price. Money doesn't make the acquisition. He only gave money. He didn't take the produce. We know according to the Gemara that you only acquire when you take the produce, not when you pay the money. Amalahu, so Rav Papa responded, I'm only talking about receiving the curse. Someone that retracts after the money's paid, he gets the curse of Mishapara. So that's what I'm talking about, that you're not supposed to retract. Ipasak Kashara Gavaya, if they made up that he can get the cheaper price. The word Kashara Gavaya is a little confusing. It means that you get more produce per money, which means that it's cheaper. Kashara Gavaya sounds like higher. The higher price, but it means the higher amount of produce. I think that's the explanation, I think. So if he makes up that he gets a cheaper price than Meicher Kahadabay, then the seller, when he retracts, then he gets the curse.
Bargavo, is that something that used for the temple?
Shara Gavaya is the shar is the going rate.
Okay.
Gavaya means higher, but higher in what? Higher price or higher in amount of what you receive. So it depends. I think it can be used differently.
This dowry example, is it like a set volume or a set price equivalent of?
Actually both. They're setting up. They're saying that every 4 this is worth 1 coin. Every 4 bundles is worth 1 coin. And then the price goes up. The price goes down. That he gets 5 of them for 1 coin. So he wants to retract from the original price and use the new one. He wants to get 5. So what happens over here is that if they made up that you're always going to get the lower price, whatever it is, either this or if the price changes the lower price, then if the seller says, no, I'm not doing the lower price, then the seller gets the Mishapara. That's what we're learning over here. Because he doesn't want to go along with the agreement.
Don't know if the stipulation was there.
No, if the stipulation was there, that's what we're saying. If the stipulation was there, then the seller would get the lower price. If the seller gets the Mishapara if he doesn't want to give the lower price. Ilay Pasak, and if he doesn't make up that stipulation, then like Keach Kahadabe, when we're talking about who would possibly want to retract from this. Then the purchaser wants to retract because he doesn't want the higher price. He can buy the same thing next door for even less money. So Makabala Lakech Mishapara, then the purchaser would get the Mishapara. Amalei Ravina Rav Papa. We were saying before that this was the sages were talking to Rav Papa. They asked him this, and Rav Papa responded that it's Mishapara. And now Ravina comes in and says, "Mimai de Rabbanani." He's going. Ravina's taking us back to a discussion that we had, I think, in last parak, we had a machlaikas if money acquires, or who's allowed to retract. According to Reb Shimon, only the one with the money was allowed to retract. But the purchaser that paid the money was not allowed to retract. And forget about the Mishapara, he wasn't allowed to retract. It was considered a done deal with him. Once he pays the money, he doesn't have the money, so he can't retract. So the Gemara asks like this. The Gemara says, how do you know, or Ravina is asking, my derabanan, the pligiel eder Reb Shimon, the amri mais lekanu. How do you know that we're dealing with the opinion of the Rabbanan here? And we're saying that money doesn't really acquire. Our whole issue is that if he makes up that he's going to take the lowest price, if that stipulation was there, then he's going to take the lower price, which is right now. Be like pasak, but if he didn't make up that stipulation, then shakal kedemikara, then he's going to take the original price. Maybe Dilma Reb Shimoni, Damar Mais Kainis. Maybe it's following the view of Reb Shimon. It was maybe the Mishnah that says that you can make up this stipulation. Maybe this is following the view of Reb Shimon. Damar Mais Kainis, that he says that money actually acquires. Let me explain to you. I'll just throw in one point over here to clarify what's going on. Maybe the concept of mishapara only applies when the price doesn't change. Maybe if the price changes, the rabbis agree that you don't get a mishapara. You don't get the curse. So why does the Mishnah say they have to make this stipulation? Well, the Mishnah is following the other opinion that says that the whole acquisition takes place when the money's given. For that you have to make the stipulation. But regarding a mishapara, when there's no acquisition, maybe that's only if you're not losing money. But if you're losing money, maybe you can actually retract without any mishapara. That's what the Gemara is asking. Dilma, yeah.
How do you clarify?
Dilma Reb Shimon he damar mais kindness. Maybe the Mishnah that says they have to make the stipulation is the opinion of Reb Shimon. And when you make up kashara gavaya, then shakal kihashta, then you get the new price. Be like pasak. If you don't make that up, then shakal kimnikar, then you have to take the old price. Because money acquires. Aval Rabbanan, but according to the other opinion, the rabbis that say that money does not acquire, you have to actually move the produce. Bein pasuk, bein like pasuk, shakal kihashta. Whether you have the stipulation or you don't have the stipulation, you can take the new price. The daita deina shatara zila, because even though he didn't specify the stipulation, but of course he meant that he wants the lower price. Maybe the stipulation is implied. In the Mishnah didn't say that. The Mishnah is Reb Shimon.
So according to
that's what Ravina is asking.
the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who holds that if you have to, by paying,
You already acquire.
So I guess to the other rabbis, if you bought groceries, you left it, you paid for it, but you left it at the supermarket, you haven't taken it home.
Right. According to them, still the owners.
Is here up Shimon?
Yeah. When it comes around Lag Ba'omer time, we start to see a lot of Reb Shimons.
A lot of times in the Mishnah.
Yeah, it means Reb Shimon Mayachai.
Oh, wow.
Plain Reb Shimon is Reb Shimon Mayachai. I think they say a difference. That before the cave, he was called Reb Shimon Mayachai. After the cave, he's called Reb Shimon. Something like that.
The default here is, do we have a default, or does it depend on the area?
The default of
Money or produce first?
no, we say that the produce acquires. Money just gets him a mishapara. Now the Gemara is suggesting that maybe mishapara only comes when the price stayed the same and you're still backing out. Maybe if when the price changes, the rabbis agree that you can back out without a mishapara. Maybe it's the Mishnah says no, you need a stipulation to back out or to get the lower price. So that's Reb Shimon's view. He said money acquires, so that you acquired it already. That's a different story. Maybe according to the rabbis, not. That's what he's suggesting. This Gemara should have been back in the last chapter when we were discussing this. So the Gemara says, or Rav Papa responds, Amalei, he responds to him, he says, Eimedam Reb Shimon b'chad tara. Even Reb Shimon only says that money acquires and the person can't back out That's only when the price stayed the same. A trade tari, when there's two, tari is shar. When there's two prices, me Amar, did Reb Shimon say that you can't back out? If you don't say this, the whole concept of mishapara, according to Reb Shimon, doesn't exist because once you give the money, you can't back out. So when does the mishapara apply according to him? Okay, Reb Shimon doesn't hold of mishapara. There's no concept of mishapara. It's only in the rabbi's dictionary, the word mishapara. He doesn't have it. But Tanya, but it can't be like that. But we have a brisa. We call makim kach halacha. Aval amru chacham mishapara. This is actually a statement of Reb Shimon. That Reb Shimon says that even though this is the halacha, but there is a mishapara. So, which means that Reb Shimon does hold to the concept of mishapara. My mikol makim. What does it mean? Nevertheless, lav delishna lekech delishna meicher mekabel mishapara. That they each get a mishapara. So it must be. How is there ever a mishapara, according to Reb Shimon, if you can't back out? Because the sale is a done deal. Purchaser can never back out. Elakikam Reb Shimon b'chatar. Reb Shimon says he can't back out. That's only if the price stayed the same. But if the price changes, then the person can back out, although he does get a mishapara. Okay.
When we covered this subject before, we learned that the reason that money doesn't acquire is because the Rabbanim wanted the risk of loss to be in the hands of the person who has possession of it.
Exactly. Yeah, Rabbi Yochanan.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's putting a lot of weight on this subject. It seems like it's almost ignoring that discussion, if I'm understanding it.
Yeah. Reb Shimon, though, Reb Shimon didn't hold of that. That's why when we had a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, I think Rabbi Yochanan said, "You asked me a kasha. I'm only explaining the Rabbanan. I'm not explaining Reb Shimon." So Rabbi Yochanan wiggled out of any problem by attributing that brisa to Reb Shimon.
Okay.
I think we had a machlekes over there, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, also regarding this. If ma'is kindness and not Yochanan it was hard to hold him, hard to question him because he would attribute things to Reb Shimon. Yeah, if I remember correctly. Amalei Rav Achabri the Rav Ashi. Going back on the story that we had, where we had this fellow that was buying something for the dowry that his father-in-law sent, and then the price changed, and he wanted to get out of it. So the Gemara says, Rav says to Rav Ashi, typically the shliach shavim mikara. Why can't he get out of it? Because father-in-law says, "Look, I made you a messenger. I made you a messenger to do good, not to mess things up. You're not my messenger, so therefore they cancel everything, right? You're not my messenger." So Amalei betagud dezaven masben. We're not talking about that case. You're not explaining the case properly. The case we were saying that he was a messenger. He's not really a messenger. He was a merchant. He was purchasing it and selling it, and for that he can't just say, "Oh, you're not my messenger," because he messed it up. He was actually buying it, and so that's the sale price. Okay, making money off his father-in-law. Says the Mishnah, Malva Adam Esarisov Chitim Bechitim Lazera. So we're talking about lending grain and then getting it back. So here we're talking about a landowner that's lending grain to the sharecropper, that when the produce comes in, he'll take the grain back and then they'll split the rest of however the arrangement is. That's acceptable. We have a problem in general of lending produce because the price may change, and when you take it back, you may be getting back a higher value than what you lent, which would be interest. It's a rabbinic interest. It's called sa b'sa, a bushel for a bushel. Right? That's a problem because the price may change in the interim and you end up getting back more value. That's a problem. But over here, when it comes to this lending grain for wheat, that we say that's acceptable if it's the owner is lending the aris. the explanation for this is that the way that they arrange how much the owner takes back versus how much the artist takes from the labor, that could be arranged in any way you want. You could take a third, you could take a quarter, you could take half, whatever they make up. That's how we can arrange it. So when he lends him the grain for the wheat, and he gives him back that grain, that's what they take back, that grain. That could just be thrown into the whole thing of, well, that was their arrangement when they made up of how much he takes. So even if he gets back a higher value, but so what? That's what they made up, that the artist takes this amount and he takes that amount. And it's easier to ignore the interest in a case like that, where it's supposed to be split up in any way that they decide, right? Well,
The same here. Let's say that they agree to the amount of the wheat. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna go up or down.
question is, if it does go up, he gives him back, a bushel plus the division. So he's giving him back more than he borrowed from. He borrowed from him wheat, he's giving him back wheat, but he's giving him back higher value.
If the price went up and he gave him the same amount.
Gives him the same amount.
But if the price went down and he gives him the
That's
same
right.
amount, he's losing.
But if it goes up, then that would be interest.
But it's not like, it's not a set of interest.
It's not a set
And
interest, so
he
it's
could
only
actually
rabbinic,
lose.
and he could lose. Those are two reasons that make it rabbinic, but that doesn't mean that it's not rabbinically forbidden. Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda held that tzarech habribus is mutter, but we didn't follow Rabbi Yehuda. And we also have, well, it wasn't made up at the beginning how much, and it's not definite that he's going to get, but it doesn't matter. It's still interest.
In general, is there a minimum share to rabbinic ribbit?
I don't think so. We're going to even have saying on the next page saying thank you. It's saying good
So-
morning. Be
So
problematic.
if a woman goes next door to her neighbor and says, can I borrow?
That's coming up. That's coming up. Wait, you'll see. You'll see. That's going to get resolved on the next. Spoil it.
Does it matter if it's for seeds or for consumption?
Yeah, the Gemara says avalei lechel, but not for consumption. Because when it's consumption, that's a regular loan, and when you give it back, you're giving back. That's the regular problem that every person has. Over here, this was a special arrangement that was acceptable when it was the sharecropper getting it from the owner.
Because you need the
That was
seed
the seed.
to get a crop.
Correct.
It's more like a sharing enterprise.
Right. Right. The Gemara is not, the Mishnah is not explaining that it's the necessity of the seed for the crop. The Gemara is explaining it as because they have this arrangement of how they're going to divide the crop, so then it fits in to however they arrange it. So here, Rabbi Gamliel was malvas of chitim lazar b'yoker v'huzlo. He would give them, if it's a higher price and it went down, a bezol v'hukru, or a lower price and it goes up. It's actually the opposite of the way I'm explaining it. But neitel mem kshar azol, he would always take it back at it says the lower price, but what that means is that he would take the lesser amount back. Which really means it's the higher price. Not because that was the halacha, he was being strict. He would never take it back. If the price changes, he would never take back extra because of the change in price. He always take back at the lesser amount. Person is allowed to lend his sharecropper wheat in exchange for wheat, and that is going to be used for the seed, for sowing. When do we say the shlayarad? That's if the person has not gone into the field yet to start planting. Abel yarad, but if he goes in, then it's going to be usher. If he's already in the field, then it's usher. The Gemara says, 1 second. Like the kamaflik ben yard ben layard. Maishnatana brother kamaflik ben yard ben layard. Why does the brisa make a difference if he's entered into the field? Is if this is not acceptable, or if he's not entered into the, according to the Mishnah, it didn't matter. Even if he's in the field, this was acceptable. Rava says, Rabidi Asbara Nali. Ravidi explained to me what's going on here. Basra the Tanadidan, regarding our Mishnah where it says it's always acceptable. Arisa Yav Bizra, the one that's responsible for the wheat is the aris. The one that's responsible to supply the seed is the sharecropper. So bein yard, bein la yarad, kamad la yav bizra matzah misalakling. Whether he goes into it or whether he doesn't go, whether he's in it or whether he's not, even if he's in the field already, starting to work and plowing, but if the owner sees that the worker, the sharecropper, is not putting the seed in, he can say, I need someone else to do this. I'm sorry, the deal's off. You're not plowing. You're not plowing. You're not sowing. I'm not going to get my things. You're out of here. And it's his responsibility, the aris's responsibility to get the seed. So if that's the case, when he's going into it, into the field, how do they translate less than? Goes down into the field for less than this, under the agreement that he will reduce his share of the crop in order to return the seed to the lander. So the arrangement now, basically, when he's taking the seed now, that's going into the arrangement of how he's going to pay back with the whole transaction here of how the division takes place between the owner and the sharecropper. However, Ba'asra de Tanabra, when we're talking about the Tanabra is the Brisa. The author of the Brisa, Bra means outside, means it was not entered into the Mishnayos. So Mara Ara Tanabra, Mari Ara Yav Bizra. The one who supplies the seed is the owner of the field. Ila Yarad Matzimasalakli. If he didn't go into the field, then we couldn't change the deal. But Kikanachis, but once he's in the field, the Batzmiachi Kanachis. So therefore, if he's not in the field, then because he can cancel it, so then when he's giving him the seed now and he has to pay it back for whatever reason, you see what he would be doing here is he'd be saying that usually owners supply the seed. In this case, you're going to supply the seed, but I'm going to lend it to you and you'll pay me back. So, but that's the arrangement that he has. But once he's already in the field, then the owner is responsible to supply the seed. If he's changing it now, he can't get him out of the arrangement because it was his responsibility first. He went into it. Now he's already there. So then when he's borrowing the seed, it's a regular borrowing, and it's not going back into the original relationship, the original transaction of how they're going to divide it. Now he's just borrowing. Now he's just borrowing as a regular borrower, and that he's not allowed. That would be awesome. Okay, that's the explanation for why we make a difference if he started working in the field. Because the responsibility was on the owner. He can't get him out of this arrangement. The arrangement already took place, and now he's just borrowing seed as a regular person. Taner Rabbana was taught in Brisa, a person can tell his friend, Halveni kor chitim v'kaitis leidamim. Huzlo nice and lechitim. Lend me a bushel of wheat. He sets a price for how much the value of the wheat is, according to the going price now. And then it goes down, the price goes down, and he gives him back the wheat. Hukru, if the price goes up, then nice and demayim, then instead of giving wheat now, a bushel, which that would be more expensive, what he does is, nice and demayim, he just gives the value, the original value. He doesn't have to pay more. The Gemara says, 1 second, how could you end up paying back if the price goes down? How do you end up giving him a less amount? You set a price on it, which means you already know its value, and you should be paying back its value. It's exactly the opposite. It's supposed to be as if you didn't set its value. In other words, when you say I'm lending you a bushel of wheat, which has the value of $100, if you didn't set that as which has the value of $100, then you can give back a bushel of wheat.
What he just stipulates that it's worth the amount when you buy it. I mean, there's no set price in the future because he doesn't.
Let me see how they say it over here. If the price of wheat depreciates, why should it be permitted for the borrower to pay him with wheat worth less than the value of the amount he borrowed, right? The Gemara answers, if the lender did not set a price but merely lent him wheat and it depreciates in value, the lender takes his wheat, as they did not agree that the borrower must repay the wheat according to its value at the time of the loan was taken out. But if it appreciates in value, the borrower gives the value of the wheat he borrowed as per the market rate when he borrowed it in order to avoid the payment of interest. Now, problem is, you weren't allowed to do this anyway, right? Basa was problematic. You weren't allowed to lend wheat and take back wheat. How does this work? Why was this allowed? Even though he spoke of a loan, since they set a price, it is deemed a valid sale, completed right away, and there's no concern of the market price subsequently changes. Okay, the commentaries are dealing with the issue of this. Okay.
So if you lend me gasoline for my lawnmower, and a month later it's $5 a gallon, I give you back a gallon, or I give you the value?
So if we set a price that
$3.
this is, if we discuss the value of it, then I'd have to give you the value back. But if we discussed just the amount of it, then I would be giving you the amount back. Problem is that if it changes, then I can't give you the extra because I'll be giving you more value. I'm gonna have to give you just
Half a gallon?
half a gallon.
Wow.
Person can't tell his friend, give me a quart of wheat now and I'll give it back to you when I grow it on the threshing floor. I'll give it back to you later. But he can tell him, lend it to me now until my son comes or until I find the key, because I have it already. That's a different story. In other words, even though Sabasa is a problem, but it's not a problem if the person has the actual saw right there. The rabbis only made a stringency if he doesn't have it. The rabbinic law. Hillel says it's a problem even if you have it. And Hillel would say, you shouldn't lend your friend a loaf of bread unless you say what its value is. Maybe the price of wheat's going to go up. When you give it back, you're giving back too much. So you have to say its value, so you can always give back the value. And the Hillel is very strict about this. Yeah, those the ladies in North Miami Beach or in Crown Heights or in the from areas that are borrowing from the neighbors Erev Shabbos some eggs and something that would be a problem according to Hillel. Always they send the kids out, go knock on the neighbor's door, see if they have any flour. Amar Rav Huna.
So this is the original Hillel?
Yeah, that's what it seems.
So this is really kind of an ancient Mishnah.
Yeah. Ancient Mishnah, and it's surprised that Hillel is going to be strict about this. No? Amar Rav Huna. When it says Yishlei saw loivasa, if you have a saw in your cupboard, if you have a saw of wheat in your cupboard, then you can borrow another saw of wheat, because if you have it, you're allowed to borrow, because you have it already, you can pay back, right? Sasayim, if you have two saw, then loivasa sasayim, you can borrow two saw. No, you can do this differently. You can borrow many saw if you have one saw. Yeah, I'm borrowing it corresponding to the saw that I have. Okay, great. Now put it aside. I'm borrowing this corresponding to the saw that I put it aside. You can do each one corresponding to that one. That's the okay. Tani Rab Chia l'siula Rab Yitzchak. Rab Chia has a support for Rab Yitzchak. Tipas yayin ein lai, tipas shemen ein lai. If he doesn't have a drop of wine, if he doesn't have a drop of oil, but if he did have that drop, and then you would be allowed to borrow many drops. That seems to support Rabbi Yitzchak. Hillel says it's not allowed. Rav Nachman, Shmuel. Nachman says in the name of Shmuel, Divrei Hillel. The halacha is like Hillel. However, the Gemara concludes less hilchas hakavasei, but we don't paskin like that. But we say that a woman is allowed to give her friend a loaf of bread and get back a loaf of bread. Rav Yuda v'china Yolayim leitil v'isha. Hillel says a person shouldn't do this. Rav Yuda Shmuel zu Divrei Hillel. This is the words of Hillel. The sages say, "Love him stam, uparim stam." You just have to borrow and lend back. It's you borrow and you pay back. It's not a problem at all. You don't have to set a price on it when it comes to these things. Amar Rab Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rab Yehuda says name of Shmuel. Another statement. It says Bnei Chabura makpid v'zeh mishum mida mishum mishkal mishum minyan mishum lavin apayrim b'yom divrei hilach mishum ribis. It says if there would be people that go to study or they go people on the road, traveling together, if they're very particular, this depends on the group of Chassidim. This wouldn't apply. So it's all everyone's. But sometimes they go and everyone has their name on everything, and they're together. Everyone's very. Someone told me I went into yeshiva and there were ketchups on the counter. It said on it, "Ani makpid." I'm like particular about anyone taking. So all right. So, but people that have this, so then they violate the laws of measurements, the laws of weights, the laws of counting, and they borrow and they repay on Yom Tov, which is a problem because maybe they're going to write something down. And according to Hillel, they're also violating ribbis. Rav Yehuda Shmuel, Rav Yehuda said name Shmuel, Talmid Chachamim, but the sages, Mutarim Lilvaiseh Mizeh B'Ribbis, they're allowed to borrow on ribbis because they know how to forgive it and how to view the whole transaction, that it's not an issue. My time, what's the reason? Made the Yadi the ribbis asura, they know that it's prohibited. Matanu the Yave Adadi, they're just giving him a gift. So somehow they're getting out of it. Now, is this specifically Talmidei Chachamim, or is this any people that like the housewives are also doing the same thing? When you give a loaf and you get back a loaf that has egg challah, water challah, you're getting back something. They're just the whole thing. They're not makpid on, which is acceptable. Amalei Shmuel Avu Abari. Shmuel says to Avu Abari, Halveni mea pilpulin b'mea vesen pilpulin barach. Lend me 100 peppers and I'll give you back 120, and it's not going to be a problem. It's going to be good. Rav Yehuda, this was acceptable. Rav Yehuda Marav mutadam halvas panav b'nei beis b'ribis de latim tam ribis. Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav. This is different. He says that a person is allowed to lend his family on interest because he wants to show them how terrible interest is, and they'll start to see very quickly that they're losing money. They'll know that this is an issue. Like to train them that they shouldn't be getting involved with interest. You're allowed to train them. The Gemara says a lot of milsi. It's not so because they're going to start to get accustomed to this and they're going to end up doing it. Amara, let's see. A person can tell his friend, if you help me weed today, then I'll. What's nachish? Weed? Yeah. Yeah. Weed with me today, and I'll weed your yard tomorrow. Edarimi ve'edarimach. Help dig with me today, and I'll dig with you tomorrow. But don't tell him weed with me and I'll dig with you. Or edarimi dig with me, and I'll weed with you, because you may be giving back interest in labor. Yeah. Now you're allowed to do this. All of the how do they translate garid? All the days of the winter, the dry season. All the dry season is all considered one. All the rainy season is one, which basically means the Gemara is recognizing that if you tell him, weed with me today, I'll weed with you tomorrow, you may end up weeding on a winter day, which is much shorter than a summer day. So you're going to end up, the difference, sunrise to sunset could switch. He said, no, we're ignoring that, all the dry season, all the rainy season. But you can't tell him, plow with me in the dry season and I'll plow with you in the rainy season. Because you're changing the sunrise,
hour
sunset.
by hour.
Huh?
It's not give me hour for hour.
Yeah, if it would be hour by hour, it wouldn't matter.
So it's work day.
It's work day.
No, the hours change.
If it's Shreis Manias, if it's not 60 minutes an hour, right? Rabbi Gamliel says that there is pre-interest and there's post-interest. Ketzad, how is that? Nothing in a little man. If he sees he wants to borrow from him, he sends him a gift. And he says, Vaimer, he says, B'shvil shetilveni zu, b'shvil shetilveni zui ribis mukdemet. This is pre-ribis. He's sending it to him to have a to get the loan later. So okay, love amen of yechsales ma'asav. It could be post-ribis also. He borrows from him and then he returns it. Afterwards, for Shabbos, he sends him a gift for the money that you had lent me. This is post-interest. Reb Shimon says that there's even interest with words. He can't tell him, you should know that so-and-so is coming from such and such a place. I guess that would be like some benefit of business or something. The following people violate the negative prohibition. Hamalva, the lender, Alayva, the borrower, Variv, the guarantor, Vaidim, and the witnesses. Also the scribe. Okay, what do they violate? Not to give a loan with interest, not to take interest. They also violate not to oppress him when you're collecting. Also violating, don't put on interest. And also not to put a stumbling block, because each person here is causing the other person to violate the interest. Everyone is making the other one stumble. Someone that lent his friend money, but he usually doesn't go and tell him, that borrows from his friend money. Usually doesn't tell her hello. He's not allowed to go now and start telling him hello. Interest of anything that could be interest, even when kol davar could also mean dibar. Any speech could also be interest. From the following violate. The lender violates all of them. The borrower, he says not to pay interest to your brother. Also not to the other verse of to your brother you shouldn't pay interest. And not to put a stumbling block because you're causing the lender to violate. The guarantor and the witnesses, they only violate the not to place on him interest. Tanya Reb Shimon Aimer, Malvi Ribis, people that lend money with interest, they lose more than they gain. Not only that, they consider Moshe Rabbeinu a wise man. That's euphemistically saying. They consider him foolish. And the terasa and his Torah is false. And they say, Moshe Rabbeinu would realize the money that you can make like this. He never would have written it down. He never would have made this law. When Rav Dimi came, he said, if someone lends someone money or borrows from someone money, and you know that he doesn't have it, you're not allowed to go in front of him to keep nudging him. For a Talmud Laim, he can't be an oppressor. Can't keep embarrassing him. It's as if you judged him in two judgments. You caused someone to ride over his head. And here the Rishenu is translated as Naisha, as to oppress. Banu Beisha Mamayim, we came in water, fire and water. And there's two judgments over here when they're oppressed. Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, Rabbi says name Rav Kol Mishi Yesh Leim Mayisum Malvaisim Shlei Beidem Overblei Mishum B'Lefnei Yivel Michshel. Anyone that lends money without witnesses violates the prohibition of not to put a stumbling block, because the person may end up denying it. Because it's a curse to himself. Stop from speaking falsehood, and that speak because the person is going to deny it sometimes. If Amalei Rabbanan Ravashi Kamakayim Ravina Kol Madam Rabbanan. The Rabbanan said to Ravashi that Ravina fulfills everything the sages say. They sent him on Erev Shabbos. Send me, please, or lend to me 10 coins, because I came across a small piece of land that I want to buy. Send me witnesses and we'll write a document. He sends him to him. You want from me, you need witnesses and a document. Shalach like Kolshkin, for sure for you. Kolshkin Mar, the tired Begirse, because you're always learning. A Mishnah, you're going to forget. Yerm Kol Atzmi. There's that story with the Rashash. You know, the story, someone paid him back, and he put it in his Gemara. He forgot the person paid him back. He claimed the money from him, and the person was so embarrassed, he moved out of town. And then afterwards, he found the money when he came to that Masechta again. He said, "So that's the money." So he said, "I'll announce in Shul that no one should talk about it." You know, he said, "Everyone's just gonna think you're a good person. That's why you're doing that." It's okay. Your son can marry my daughter. Okay, let's finish this. 3 people cry and they're not answered. In other words, basically they cried and not answered because they did it to themselves. It's their own fault. They lend money without witnesses. Someone that buys a master for himself, we'll see in a second. And someone whose wife rules over him. Stand in that line, right? What does it mean? He buys a master for himself. Some say that when he lends money on interest, he says that it's not my money, it belongs to someone else, belongs to a guy, to Ronald Reagan. Some say if he writes his property over to his son, to his children while he's alive. What does that mean? That he's embarrassed in this town? He doesn't move to another town?
One who is unsuccessful. The one town does not move to a different town.
Yeah, if he doesn't move when it's time is right. Okay.
Wow, thank you. Wow.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a good
I'm
day.
gonna call you Pat.
Okay.